Welcome to the very first episode of Growth Unleashed, the podcast for pet brands that want to grow smarter without relying on paid ads. I'm Matt, the founder of Bubblegum Search.
And I'm Louis, an SEO Manager here at Bubblegum. And today we want to talk about the number one reason your product or service isn't selling as well as you'd like in the pet care industry, and that is trust.
Yes, so Louis, before we get tactical, why do you think trust is especially critical for pet brands?
I think for pet brands, ultimately it comes down to the owners absolutely love their pets and they see them as a member of their family. And in a way that puts, pet care in the same sort of ballpark as your money or your life content. Yeah. People that are shopping for it need to really trust your brand. They need to kind of, be able to verify that your product is doing what it says it's going to do. And they want to read what other people think about your product. Ultimately, trust is crucial. They don't like being sold too heavily in an industry like this. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, if it's a product or a service, it's an emotional buy, right? It's kind of like safety before value in that sense,
Exactly. And I think the second part to this is that search is, evolving. The way that people learn about brands and discover them is changing. And in that sense, people won't necessarily go onto your website to learn how to trust you. Instead, they'll Google about your brand. They'll look for reviews. They'll look for people on threads, all of these different places online that you can be mentioned. They'll be looking at those before they reach your website. And so I think it's imperative that they're gaining trust about your brand from those sources before they ever reach your website itself.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got almost like the two sides to it, if you like. So you've got the audience, the pet parents, and as we've just said, they are already in a kind of an emotional buying state, and that so trust is already paramount for them. But it goes hand in hand with, as you say, what we're seeing recently with this shift in Google and AI search, AI search, whether that's Gemini or ChatGPT or even in Google itself with the AI overviews now appearing, how they're now changing and responding their signals to show trusted brands. And so, as you say, like it could be a range of platforms, and it's not just the traditional SERPs anymore.
Exactly. So I think if you talk about building trust for your pet brand and how you do that, there's kind of two crucial sides to it. There's the offsite side and the onsite side. So if we start with offsite signals and how you could, build trust with your audience through those, what do you think matters most?
Yeah, so it's shifted a bit, but if we take it back a step, I think it was traditionally links were always about trust and authority. And don't get me wrong, they still are, and they're still critical. But there's a shift from just links to like branded mentions as well. And so again, traditionally it was about media publications, getting linked and mentions within media publications, or even relevant more niche pet publications as well. Yeah. And again, super critical. But with this shift in, AI search and large language models, the branded mentions have now, I would say, if not on par, perhaps getting to a point where it's becoming even more critical and important.
Yeah.
And also just the distribution of those mentions. Again, it used to just always be about the media publications, but now with the ability of the AI, again, I know studies have come out recently where it could be Reddit forums or like YouTube channels.
Yeah.
There's various other third-party platforms where all these trusted mentions are getting picked up on, and ultimately becoming more of a factor and both a ranking factor in Google, but also within the large language models as well.
Yeah, I think, it's also just the case that if a potential customer Googles your brand because they're thinking about purchasing from you, let's say, they need to see you show up on Instagram, Facebook, review sites. They want to see those mentions on those independent pet blogs. and I guess more niche kind of publications.
Yeah, so it's kind of, I guess what we're saying is that you've got to now be showing up where your audience is already influenced.
Yeah.
So, if it's a particular podcast that they follow or a YouTube channel that they follow within that space, is because they already know, like, and trust it. So the job these days really is, in addition to everything else that we do, is to get visibility within those. And so to give an example of that, it can be as simple as sponsorship. It could be sponsoring a particular podcast. Organically, it could be reaching out and try and find like guest speaking opportunities within some of those channels. But whatever tactically it might be, it's not enough anymore not to have that visibility on those other channels where the audience hangs out, and not to be the one to influence them, because if you don't, your competitors certainly are. So so I guess the next, once we moved on from that, all right, let's say that we've built some trust and we built some branded mentions, and we can see all the good signals like branded search going up. We earn the clicks, and they land on the website. What actually makes them stay versus bouncing and leaving?
So for me, I think the number one thing that's going to make someone stay on your website is trust again. So you need to be instilling, the values of your brand, reviews high up on the website. Basically, everything that they think they've learned about your brand, you need to verify as soon as they land on the website. So for me, I think review stars and particularly user-generated content in the pet care industry are super valuable. Again, coming back to that kind of emotional shopping that they're doing, they want to see that other people trust you with their pets, and they want to see, for example, let's say you sell dog food, if there's a review at the top of your page with a picture that someone's sent in of their dog enjoying your brand's dog food, that is, kind of the best value that you could get in terms of like user-generated content. And I think that really drives that you can trust a brand.
I mean, also it ties back into what Google's always said, with EAT, and especially with the expertise and experience as well. So experience, expertise, authority, and trust. You're kind of ticking a lot of those boxes with that kind of user-generated content. Are you visibly showing people experience your product or service? Yes. Does that in turn show that you guys are trusted and the experts and have authority in it? Yes. So it's the perfect way to give exactly what Google wants, while also giving what your audience will want, and the value that comes back from that as well.
Exactly. And I think, going further than just user-generated content, implementing something like, a lot of websites have an About Us page, or they have a Meet the Team page, and where you're really going for an emotional connection with your customers, those are the perfect places to sell that story. Maybe they go and look at the team page and they see that, one of the team members has the same cat that they do. It's things like that that will build trust with the audience, that you kind of, you might not think in most, using e-commerce websites as an example, that's not always important. But I think this industry is one where it really is crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of it's quick wins, really, and it's underutilized. It's still surprising how many brands still just hide away without humanizing. And it could be as simple as you say, like a photo or a video of the team, or, if it's e-com, it could be of like a team in the warehouse,
Exactly.
or by the vans if it's like a service-based business. And so you show off the branding, but you're just also showing off the team and the humans behind the team, right? So it's kind of simple in a sense, but by doing so, actually gives people and obviously when that ties in with all the other signals like we talked about, like reviews and testimonials and user-generated content, but as a collection, it just invokes trust and expertise and authority. So cool. So with that in mind, if we were to say in the first 30 days of your journey to build that trust with your brand, where would you start?
So I would say the first thing I would say is it's obviously longer than 30 days as a journey. Building trust is something that you're going to continuously do throughout your brand's lifespan, basically. With that said, I think there's some very simple on-site actions you could take. So an immediate blocker you often find, which is something really obvious, is just simply having pages about delivery details, returns, refunds, and contact details. I think a lot of kind of drop shipping e-commerce websites completely do away with those, and that is something that would turn me off immediately. Beyond that, I think if you were to look to get reviews above the fold on your page, if you're on WordPress, for example, that's as simple as adding a widget. Even just the 5 stars, if you don't have any user-generated content yet, is going to do wonders just for telling your audience that, there are third-party reviews out there that are verified about your business. And I think if we look to the off-page stuff, which I think is what takes longer, in the first 30 days, I would aim to put together a list of your ideal publications and kind of media targets, forums you'd like to appear in, and just aim to go after one of them.
Yeah.
If you can outreach in the first 30 days to one of your kind of desired publications, you're already on the journey, and that's a great start.
Yeah. Small steps, especially, as we said, when it can feel a bit overwhelming and there's multiple platforms that your audience hangs out on. It's kind of just pick one in the first 30 days and get a level of visibility or brand mentions within that 30 days and use that as a stepping stone. Because of course, as you say, like beyond that 30 days, some of the wider points to be covered on, where it's like getting brand mentions wider afield, or even getting those kind of important backlinks on media websites. Fine, like you need good digital PR campaigns running against those to achieve that, and of course that comes with multiple campaigns and over multiple months. But as you said, like just get the ball rolling on at least one of those goals, and within one of those audience is a good goal. Cool. Okay, so look, we hope you've enjoyed this episode and it's been insightful. We're going to be diving into lots of these topics in this series, so if you like more of this content, then be sure to subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching, and we'll catch you next time.